The candles flickered between us, casting shadows that danced across Emma's face. 22 years. 22 years of marriage, and we were sitting in the same Italian restaurant where I'd proposed to her. Giacomo's had been our place, the spot where we'd celebrated every milestone, every triumph, every moment worth remembering. I watched her study the menu, though we both knew she'd order the seafood linguine.
She always did.
Her hair, now threaded with silver, was pulled back the way I loved it. She wore the emerald dress I'd bought her last Christmas, the one that made her eyes look like the ocean at dusk. "You're staring," she said without looking up, a small smile playing at her lips. "Just remembering," I replied, taking a sip of the Chianti the waiter had poured. She finally met my gaze, and something flickered there, something I'd been seeing for months but had refused to name. It was guilt, raw and unmistakable, swimming just beneath the surface of those green eyes I'd loved since we were both 25. "Remembering what?" she asked softly. "Everything." I set down my glass. "The first time we came here, you wore a yellow sundress and ordered wine you couldn't pronounce. You were so embarrassed when the waiter corrected you that you turned the color of marinara sauce." She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. God, I was such a mess back then. "You were perfect." The word hung between us like a prayer or an accusation. I couldn't tell which anymore. Our waiter, a young man with slicked back hair and an eager smile, appeared to take our order. Emma ordered her linguine. I ordered the osso buco, though I knew I wouldn't eat much of it. My appetite had been gone for weeks, ever since I'd found the first text message on her phone while she was in the shower. She hadn't been careful. Or maybe part of her had wanted me to find out. The message was from someone named M in her contacts. Can't stop thinking about last night. "When can I see you again?" I'd sat on the edge of our bed, her phone burning in my hand like evidence of a crime I never thought she'd commit. I could have confronted her then, could have demanded answers, thrown accusations, let rage consume everything we'd built. Instead, I deleted the message thread, placed her phone back on the nightstand, and walked downstairs to make coffee as if my world hadn't just fractured into 1,000 irreparable pieces. "David," Emma's voice pulled me back to the present. "You okay? You seem a million miles away." "Just thinking about work," I lied. The lie came easier than it should have. I'd been practicing. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was warm, familiar, devastating. "Let's not think about work tonight. Let's just be here. Together. Together." The word almost made me laugh. We hadn't been together, truly together, in months. She'd been somewhere else with someone else in ways that had nothing to do with physical distance. I'd spent the weeks after discovering that first message watching her, not obviously, not obsessively, but with the quiet attention of someone trying to understand how they'd missed the signs. She'd been staying late at the office 3 nights a week. She'd started going to yoga classes on Saturday mornings, classes I later discovered didn't exist. She'd become protective of her phone, angling it away from me, taking calls in other rooms, and I'd said nothing. I'd watched our marriage dissolve like sugar in hot water, silent and complete, while maintaining the fiction that everything was fine. "Emma," I said, threading my fingers through hers, "do you remember what you said to me on our wedding day?" She blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I said a lot of things. You said I promise to be honest with you even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." Her hand tensed in mine. "I remember. Do you still believe that? That honesty matters even when it's painful?" Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the mask she'd been wearing. "Why are you asking me this?" "Because," I paused, choosing my words carefully, "because I need to know if we're still the people who made those promises to each other." The food arrived before she could answer. The waiter set down our plates with practiced efficiency, wished us a pleasant meal, and disappeared. Emma stared at her linguine as if it were a problem she needed to solve. I watched her twirl her fork through the pasta, watched her lift it halfway to her mouth before setting it back down. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Can't eat." I kept my voice neutral, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Can't pretend." She looked up at me and her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. "I've been trying so hard to pretend everything is normal, but it's not. Nothing is normal anymore." I cut into my osso buco, the meat falling off the bone with ease. "What's changed?" She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Everything. Nothing. I don't know anymore." A couple at the table next to us was celebrating something, their laughter punctuating the quiet jazz playing overhead. They looked young, maybe 30, still in that phase where they believed love was enough to conquer anything. I envied them their innocence. "Talk to me, Emma." I set down my fork and leaned back in my chair. "We've been married for 22 years. Surely we can talk." She took a long drink of her wine, draining half the glass in one go. "Do you remember when you asked me to marry you? Right here at this table?" "Of course. You said you chose me because I made you feel safe. Because with me you never had to wonder where you stood." She was crying now, tears tracking silent paths down her cheeks. "You said you trusted me more than anyone in the world." Past tense. She was speaking in past tense, and that told me everything I needed to know about where this conversation was heading. "I remember," I said quietly. She reached for her napkin, dabbed at her eyes, destroying the makeup she'd spent an hour applying. "David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." She took a breath that seemed to hurt her. "Do you still trust me?" There it was. The question that would end everything. 4 words that carried the weight of 2 decades of shared history, of a house in the suburbs and a daughter at college, of countless ordinary moments that had woven our lives together into something I'd thought was unbreakable. I could have lied. Could have said yes and bought us both more time in this comfortable fiction we'd been maintaining. But she'd asked for honesty, and after everything, I owed her that much. "I know about the affair, Emma." The words landed between us like stones dropped into still water. She flinched as if I'd struck her face draining of color. "What?" Her voice was barely audible. "I've known for 2 months, since I saw the messages on your phone." She covered her mouth with her hand, her whole body beginning to tremble. "David, I don't." I held up my hand. "Not yet. Let me finish." She nodded, tears flowing freely now, but she didn't speak. "I've spent the last 2 months trying to understand how we got here, trying to figure out if there was a moment I could point to and say, that's where it started to fall apart. But the truth is, I don't know. Maybe it happened slowly. Maybe it happened all at once. Maybe it doesn't matter." "It matters," she choked out. "God, David, it matters so much." "Does it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, the result is the same. You chose someone else. You looked at what we had, what I thought we had, and decided it wasn't enough." She was sobbing now, drawing looks from other diners. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated even. Instead, I just felt tired. Bone-deep, soul-weary tired. "I never meant to hurt you," she said through her tears. "No one ever does." I picked up my wine glass, studied the ruby liquid inside. That's what makes betrayal so devastating. It's rarely intentional cruelty. It's just weakness, selfishness, a moment of desire that steamrolls over years of commitment. "Please," she reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back. "Please let me explain." "Explain what?" "How it started? Why you did it? How you justified it to yourself?" I shook my head. "I don't need those details, Emma. They won't change anything." "Then why are we here?" she demanded, anger breaking through her tears. "Why bring me to this restaurant, to our place, if you've already decided we're over?" I met her eyes fully then, let her see the grief I'd been carrying in silence for 2 months. "Because you deserved a proper goodbye. We deserved one. After 22 years, I couldn't just end it with a lawyer's letter or a late-night argument. I needed to sit across from you one last time in the place where everything began." Emma's hands were shaking as she gripped the edge of the table. The restaurant hummed with life around us. Clinking glasses, murmured conversations, the soft scrape of silverware against porcelain. But we existed in a bubble of devastation, separate from the joy surrounding us. "How long have you been planning this?" Her voice was hollow, defeated. "Since the day I found out. I called my lawyer the next morning. Filed the papers 3 weeks ago. They're in my car." I paused, took a breath. "I wanted to give you this night because I needed closure. I needed to look at you and understand how the woman I loved more than anything could do this to us." "And do you understand?" She was looking at me with desperate eyes, as if my understanding might somehow absolve her. "No, I don't think I ever will." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Part of me, the part that had loved her for more than half my life, wanted to reach across the table and comfort her. But that part was drowning beneath the weight of betrayal, suffocated by the knowledge that while I'd been planning our anniversary dinner, she'd been planning her next rendezvous with him. "His name is Marcus." She spoke without lifting her head, her voice muffled by her palms. He's a colleague. It started 6 months ago at a conference in Chicago. Emma, don't. No. She looked up, her face streaked with mascara. You said I deserved to confess. So let me confess. Let me at least give you that. I didn't want to hear it. Knowing the fact of the affair was one thing. Knowing the details would make it permanent, indelible, impossible to ever forget or reshape into something less painful. But she was right. She needed to say it, and maybe I needed to hear it. Maybe that was the only way either of us could move forward. It wasn't planned, she continued, her words coming faster now, as if speaking them quickly might make them hurt less. We were at the hotel bar after the conference sessions ended. Everyone else had gone to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about us, actually. About how disconnected we'd become. So this is my fault? The anger I'd been suppressing for weeks began to surface. No. God, no, David, that's not what I'm saying. She reached for her wine glass with trembling hands. I'm saying I was vulnerable, lonely, and he was there, and he listened, and he made me feel seen. I see you, Emma. I've always seen you. I know you have. But somewhere along the way I stopped feeling it. We became roommates, co-workers in the business of maintaining a life. We stopped talking about anything real. We stopped touching each other unless we were about to have sex. We stopped being us. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the terrible truth was that I couldn't. We had become distant. I'd been so focused on my career, on providing for our future, that I'd stopped tending to the present. But acknowledging that didn't excuse what she'd done. Understanding the context of betrayal doesn't erase the betrayal itself. So you slept with him. I stated it flatly, forcing myself to confront the full reality. Not that night. That night we just talked, but we exchanged numbers. Started texting. Innocent at first, work stuff, funny memes, casual conversation. Then it became more. We started calling each other. Video chatting. He told me things about his life, his dreams. I told him things I hadn't told anyone in years. You could have told me those things, could I have? She leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. When was the last time we had a real conversation, David? One that wasn't about bills or Sarah's tuition or what to have for dinner? When was the last time you asked me how I was actually feeling? Not just how my day was. The accusation stung because it carried truth. I'd been coasting on autopilot for years, assuming the foundation we'd built was strong enough to require minimal maintenance. I'd taken her for granted, assumed she'd always be there, solid and unchanging as the northern star. But people aren't celestial bodies. They shift and change and need tending. Still, my neglect didn't justify her betrayal. When did it become physical? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. She closed her eyes. 3 months ago. He came to town for work. We met for dinner. One thing led to another. I went back to his hotel. How many times? David, how many times did you sleep with him, Emma? She was silent for a long moment, and I watched her calculate whether lying would spare me or make things worse. She chose honesty. 7, maybe 8. I stopped counting. 8 times. 8 separate decisions to betray our vows. 8 opportunities to stop, to turn back, to remember the life we'd built together. And she'd chosen him every single time. Did you love him? The question surprised even me. No. Her answer came immediately, forcefully. It wasn't about love. It was about feeling alive again. Feeling desired. Feeling like I was more than just someone's wife or someone's mother. You were always more than that to me, was I? She challenged. Or was I just there? Reliable, predictable Emma, always holding down the fort while you built your empire? Her words were weapons, and they found their marks, because she wasn't entirely wrong. I had built an empire, a successful consulting firm that required 60-hour weeks and constant travel. I'd told myself I was doing it for us, for our future, but maybe I'd been doing it for me. For my ego, for the satisfaction of achievement that had nothing to do with the quiet, unglamorous work of maintaining a marriage. You're right, I admitted. I failed you in a lot of ways. I became complacent. I stopped trying. I let the routine of life replace the romance we started with. Hope flickered in her eyes. Then we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can remember how to be us again. I shook my head slowly. No, Emma, we can't. Why not? Her voice cracked with desperation. If you understand how we got here, if you can acknowledge your part in this, then why can't we try to rebuild? I set down my fork and folded my hands on the table, choosing my words with the care of a surgeon making an incision. Because understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. And because there's something you don't know. She went very still. What do you mean? The night I found those messages on your phone, I didn't just delete them and walk away. I hired a private investigator. The color drained from her face again. You what? I needed to know the full truth. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made any decisions. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened a folder, and slid it across the table to her. His name is Tom Richardson. He's very thorough. With shaking hands, Emma picked up the phone and began scrolling through the photos. I watched her face as she saw herself captured in moments she'd thought were private. Entering Marcus's apartment building, leaving a hotel at noon on a Tuesday when she'd told me she was at a dental appointment, laughing with him at a restaurant across town where she'd never thought to run into anyone we knew. David, She couldn't finish the sentence. There's more, I said quietly. Keep scrolling, she did, and I watched as confusion replaced horror on her face. The photos shifted from surveillance of her affair to something else entirely. Screenshots of bank statements, credit card receipts, text messages with an unknown number. I don't understand, she said, looking up at me. Who is Kay? Her name is Catherine. She's a colleague of mine. We met at a merger negotiation 18 months ago. Emma's eyes widened. You had an affair too? No, I took the phone back from her. I considered it. She made it clear she was interested. We had dinner a few times. Drinks after long meetings. She texted me late at night. And I was tempted, Emma. God, I was so tempted, but you didn't. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. No, I didn't. Because every time I thought about crossing that line, I thought about you, about our vows, about the kind of man I wanted to be. I paused, meeting her eyes. I thought about coming home to you and having to carry that secret, that guilt, and I couldn't do it. Even when we were distant, even when I felt lonely, I couldn't betray you. Tears were streaming down her face again. So you're saying you're better than me? No, I'm saying I made a different choice. Maybe I'm not more moral, maybe I'm just more afraid of loss. Or maybe I love you more than you love me. The words hurt to say, but they needed to be said. That's not fair, she whispered. You don't know how much I love you, don't I? Because love without loyalty is just sentiment, Emma. It's a feeling without foundation. You can love someone and still hurt them, still betray them, still choose yourself over them again and again. Our waiter approached to check on us, took one look at Emma's tear-stained face and my grim expression, and quietly retreated. The couple next to us had stopped celebrating and was now pretending not to listen to our conversation. I want to fix this, Emma said desperately. Tell me what I need to do. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll never see him again. We can move, start over somewhere new. It's not that simple. Why not? People survive affairs all the time. Marriages can heal from this. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. Maybe some can, but ours can't. And I've known that since the moment I saw those messages. How can you be so sure? Because I've spent 2 months watching you, Emma. 2 months of seeing you come home to me and kiss me hello while carrying the scent of another man. 2 months of listening to you talk about your day while editing out all the parts that included him. 2 months of making love to you and wondering if you were thinking about him. She flinched with each accusation, but I continued. And the worst part? You got better at lying, more comfortable with it. It became easier for you to look me in the eye and deceive me. That's what I can't forgive. Not the affair itself, but who you became because of it. You turned into someone I don't recognize. That's not true. I'm still me. I'm still the woman you married. Are you? Because the woman I married would have been destroyed by guilt. She would have confessed immediately. She would have chosen our marriage over her own gratification. I shook my head. You're not that woman anymore. Maybe you never were. Maybe I just wanted to believe you were. Emma slumped in her chair, defeated. So what happens now? Now we finish this meal. We honor what we had by ending it with dignity. I signaled for the waiter. Then I give you the divorce papers. You sign them or you don't. That's your choice. But either way, I'm done. Where will you go? I've rented an apartment downtown. My things are already there. I moved out this morning while you were at yoga. The irony of the timing wasn't lost on me. You can have the house. I don't want it anymore. It stopped being home the moment you chose him over us. I never chose him over you, she protested weakly. You chose him 8 times. Emma, 8 times you looked at what we built together and decided it wasn't worth protecting. That's 8 chances you had to stop, to come clean, to save us. And you didn't take any of them. The waiter appeared with the check, and I handed him my credit card without looking at the total. None of it mattered anymore. The expensive wine, the special anniversary menu we'd pre-ordered, the tip I'd planned to leave to celebrate 22 years of marriage. It was all just money, and money couldn't buy back what we'd lost. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered. "I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't erase the betrayal. It doesn't rebuild trust. It doesn't turn back time." The waiter returned with my card, and I signed the receipt with steady hands. 22 years, reduced to a transaction. We sat in silence for a moment after I signed the check. Around us, life continued. Couples laughing, families celebrating, strangers falling in love over pasta and wine. The world hadn't stopped for our tragedy. It never does. Emma was staring at her hands, picking at her napkin, shredding it into tiny pieces. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. When did you stop loving me?" The question caught me off guard. "I haven't." She looked up, confusion and hope warring in her eyes. "But you're leaving." "Yes, I don't understand. If you still love me, why can't we try?" I considered my words carefully, wanting to give her this last gift of honesty. "Because love isn't enough, Emma. I've learned that these past 2 months. Love without trust is torture. It's waking up every morning and wondering if today is the day you'll betray me again. It's questioning every late meeting, every phone call, every moment you're out of my sight. That's not a marriage. That's a prison. But I could earn your trust back. It would take time, but I could. Maybe. Or maybe I'd spend the rest of my life pretending to trust you while secretly dying inside. Maybe every time you got a text, I'd wonder if it was him. Every time you were late coming home, I'd imagine the worst. That's no way to live for either of us." She nodded slowly, finally understanding. "So this is really it. This is really it. When did you become so wise?" She tried to smile, but it crumbled into more tears. "I'm not wise. I'm just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying this weight alone. Tired of loving someone who could hurt me so deeply and then sleep beside me like nothing had happened. I never slept well," she admitted quietly. "The guilt was eating me alive. Some nights I'd lie awake and watch you sleep and hate myself for what I'd done. I wanted to tell you so many times, but you didn't. No, I didn't, because I was a coward. Because I didn't want to see the look on your face that I'm seeing right now. Because I thought if I just ended it with Marcus and never told you, we could go back to normal. There is no normal to go back to. Emma, normal died the moment you decided your gratification was more important than our vows." I stood up, adjusting my jacket. The other diners had stopped even pretending not to watch us. Let them stare. Let them learn from our tragedy. Let them go home to their partners and hold them tighter. Choose them more deliberately, protect what they have before it's too late. "David, wait." Emma stood too, reaching for my arm. "Can we at least talk about Sarah?" "She's going to be devastated. Sarah knows. I told her last week when I flew out to visit her at school." Emma's face crumpled. "You told her before you told me?" "She deserved to hear it from me. Not through a late-night phone call after you'd told her your version of events. And she deserved to know that her mother's choices didn't reflect on her. That she could still trust love even though ours failed." "What did she say?" She cried. Asked me if there was any way to fix it. I told her the same thing I'm telling you. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be survived. Emma was sobbing openly now, no longer caring who saw or heard. "I ruined everything. Our family, our future, everything we built." "No," I corrected gently. "You ruined our marriage. The family still exists, just in a different form. Sarah will still have both of us. We'll still be her parents. We'll just be separate people now instead of a unit." I pulled the divorce papers from my jacket pocket and laid them on the table. "These are just the preliminary filings. My lawyer will contact you next week about the settlement. I'm not interested in fighting you, Emma. You can have the house, most of the savings, whatever you need. I just want this to be over cleanly." She stared at the papers as if they were a death sentence. In a way they were. A death sentence for our marriage. For the future we'd planned, for the people we'd been to each other. "What will you do?" she asked through her tears. "I'll heal. Eventually. I'll build a new life. Maybe I'll find someone else who can love me the way I deserve to be loved. Completely, exclusively, honestly. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just focus on being whole on my own." I paused, allowing myself one last moment of vulnerability. What hurts the most isn't that you had an affair. People make mistakes. They get weak, they fail. What hurts is that you let me keep loving you while you were betraying me. You let me plan this anniversary dinner. You let me book this restaurant and buy you that dress and write you a card about how grateful I am for every year we've had together. And all the while you knew you were destroying us. I never wanted to destroy us. I wanted to keep both. I wanted you in the way he made me feel. I thought I could have it all. That's the thing about betrayal, Emma. You can't have it all. Eventually, you have to choose. And when it came down to it, you chose wrong. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. A final benediction. A last gesture of the tenderness we'd once shared. She smelled like the perfume I'd bought her for her birthday. Like home, like 22 years of my life. Goodbye. Emma. David, please. But I was already walking away, weaving between tables of people who still believed in forever. The hostess at the front smiled at me as I passed, wished me a good evening, reminded me to come back soon. I nodded politely, knowing I'd never set foot in Giacomo's again. This place belonged to our past now, a monument to something beautiful that had been destroyed from within. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean. The street was alive with people. Couples holding hands, families heading to late movies, groups of friends laughing as they bar hopped. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, feeling the weight of 22 years lifting off my shoulders. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. How did it go, Dad? I typed back, it's done. I'm okay. Love you. Her response came immediately. Love you too. Proud of you for being strong. I pocketed my phone and started walking toward my car. Behind me, through the restaurant's windows, I could see Emma still sitting at our table, the divorce papers clutched in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. Part of me wanted to go back to comfort her, to fix her pain, but that wasn't my job anymore. She'd made her choices and now she had to live with them. We both did. Tomorrow I'd wake up in my new apartment. I'd make coffee in an unfamiliar kitchen. I'd start the process of rebuilding my life from scratch. It would be hard. There would be days when the grief would overwhelm me, when I'd question whether I'd made the right choice, when I'd wonder if love and forgiveness might have been stronger than pride and pain. But tonight, walking away from the woman I'd loved for more than half my life, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Relief that the pretending was over. Relief that I no longer had to carry the weight of her betrayal alone. Relief that I could finally start healing instead of bleeding in silence. I'd gone to that dinner to say goodbye properly, to give us both closure, to honor what we'd had by ending it with dignity rather than destruction, and I'd done that. I'd looked her in the eye, heard her confession, and still chosen myself. After 22 years of choosing us, I'd finally chosen me. As I drove away from Giacomo's, away from our past, away from the life we'd built together, I realized something. Trust, once broken, is like glass. You can glue it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. You'll always know exactly where it shattered. And eventually, those weak points will break again under the weight of ordinary life. I'd asked myself 1,000 times over the past 2 months whether I was being too harsh, too unforgiving, too unwilling to fight for us. But the truth was simple. She'd already given up on us when she'd chosen him the first time. I was just acknowledging a death that had already occurred. The city lights blurred past my windows as I drove toward my new apartment, my new life, my new future. Behind me, Emma was probably still sitting at that table, probably still crying, probably still not understanding how we'd arrived at this ending. But I understood. I understood that some betrayals are too deep to heal from. Some broken things stay broken, and some goodbyes, no matter how much they hurt, are the only honest choice left to make. 22 years ago, at that same table, I'd asked Emma to marry me. I'd promised to love her for better or worse, in sickness and health, until death do us part. Tonight, I'd kept that promise in the only way left available to me, by letting her go. Our marriage had died somewhere between her first lie and her 8th betrayal. All I'd done was give it a proper funeral. As I pulled into my new parking garage, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Remember what Grandpa used to say? Integrity is doing the right thing even when it breaks your heart. You're the strongest person I know, Dad. I sat in my car for a long moment, letting the tears I'd held back all evening finally fall. Then I wiped my eyes, got out, and walked toward my new home. Tomorrow would hurt. Next week would hurt. Maybe next year would still hurt. But I'd survive. And eventually I'd thrive. Because I'd learned the hardest lesson of all. You can love someone with everything you have and still have to let them go. Not because you stopped loving them, but because loving yourself has to matter too. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, leaving the past behind and moving toward whatever came next. Alone but whole, heartbroken but honest, ending one chapter so another could begin.